Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I will be showcasing my favorite art supplies, and I have put a link to everything I talk about down in the description. So starting off, we have paper. Just for everyday sketching, I like to use the Strathmore Vision Mixed Media Sketchbook. I primarily use this for thumbnail sketches and more refined drawings. I'm not really putting any kind of finished artwork in here, it's just a place to get my ideas down quickly and refine them as I go. It has the slightest bit of texture, so it can handle a small amount of wet mediums, but I prefer to use dry materials like graphite and colored pencils. The same goes for this smaller scale sketchbook. This is the Strathmore Mixed Media, measuring 5.5 by 8.5 inches. I use this one for everyday sketching, and it also travels well since it is quite small. It fits nicely in my bags and also holds lots of messy first draft ideas. Moving on to the Strathmore Bristol paper in the 11 by 14 inch size. This is hot press paper, which means it is extremely smooth with virtually no texture. I use this one for dry mediums as well, like colored pencils or graphite. For any wet medium, I like the Canson XL watercolor sketchbook. This one is 7 by 10 inches and it has cold press paper, so it has quite a lot of texture and it is thicker than the Bristol paper. I typically won't make any finished artwork in this one because it is smaller. I do, however, have a larger version of this sketchbook in the 11 by 15 inch size. I do wish that it were wire bound because unfortunately the glue has worn over time. But I like to use this paper to create finished pieces since I like to mostly use gouache for my illustrations, so this is my paper of choice at the moment. It doesn't warp, it has just the right amount of texture, and it's just a good size for me. And then last but certainly not least, I have a pad of palette paper. This one is by Artist Loft in the 9 by 12 inch size, and I do end up reusing them probably 4 or 5 times in between paintings, so I'm at least getting, more than one use out of them. Moving on to tools, I use this timer that is great at reminding me to take breaks. It has an optional beep that rings out when your time is up. One of my favorite tools is my pocket color wheel. I use this all the time. It helps me decide on color palettes when I'm stuck between more than one option. I use 2 different rulers, both by Westcott, the 12-inch clear ruler and the 18-inch stainless steel ruler. Now I don't need 2 rulers, but it is always nice to have more than one, especially when they're different sizes. For tape, I use this pH neutral masking tape, and I'll be honest, it is not my favorite. I will leave a link to a brand I think is better down in the description, but for now I will continue to use it until it runs out and I can try a different brand. I also love my Alvin True Circle Master template. It helps me draw nice and neat circles or rounded edges with over 40 cutouts available. And honestly, if I didn't have this template, I would have to use a compass to make a perfect circle, so I will forever be grateful for this little guy. Speaking of little guys, this pencil sharpener is small but mighty. This Mobius and Rupert brass pencil sharpener was purchased probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it is hands down the best sharpener I have used. The blade is incredibly sharp. The sharpener itself has some weight to it, which was surprising to me, but I guess it is made of brass. And as long as you don't mind loose pencil shavings, it is definitely the sharpener that I recommend. And for erasers, I use the General's Kneaded Eraser and this random big block eraser I probably got from Staples. They both work great for me, and I cannot complain about their erasing capabilities. Next up, we have pencils. I love the Kimberly brand. I have several grades of these, is that the right term? But I typically sketch with a 2B, and then this design drawing pencil, I'll sometimes use that to lightly sketch my final drawing onto the nice paper, and that is a 4H. I personally don't think you can go wrong when working with a mechanical pencil. I love these Bic Velocity 0.7mm pencils. I use these for everyday sketching with both of my mixed media sketchbooks, and I love how these have the clip on them so that they can easily slide into the rings of my sketchbook and travel nicely. And they also come with extra lead and erasers. Now for colored pencils, I am a huge fan of the Prismacolor colored pencils. I use these for my final sketches on my nice paper or adding details to finished illustrations. They just add a nice texture over gouache, and they also blend beautifully with one another. I love sketching my final drawing with them because unlike sketching with graphite, you're not left with like a gray, muddy tone to your finished artwork when using wet mediums. I have loved sketching with the lilac pencil because it's a light color and it can be erased pretty easily, which is always a plus. I also have a few of the Faber Castell polychromos, and my favorite pencil is the burnt sienna. It's just a rich shade of brown that is all buttery, and it also blends really nicely even when combining them with other brands like Prismacolor. Next up we have paint. I use a palette knife for mixing my paints. This one gets the job done and works well for me. And when I realized the ease that comes from using a palette knife rather than a brush to mix your paint, my world was just changed forever. And now mine has seen better days, but it has held strong after all these years. I also have a handy dandy spray bottle that keeps my gouache paints wet while I'm working with them. And for actual paint, I typically use acrylic gouache, but for white, I keep it simple and use the Liquitex Basics acrylic paint in titanium white. Honestly, I use this because you get more paint for less money compared to the acrylic gouache titanium white, and I have yet to notice a difference in application or dry time of the paints. Speaking of acrylic gouache, I use the Holbein brand, and I love all of these, but my absolute favorite colors are the peacock blue, light green, and deep green. For brushes, I have discovered the Princeton brand. These have become my favorite brushes. They are tapered, so they're really easy to hold, and I can say with confidence that I could use only the 1/4 inch angular shader brush to paint an entire illustration. But I also reach for the liner and the 1/2 inch flat wash brushes the most. All of these brushes get used regularly, and so far they have held up great except for some paint chipping, but that's because I had left them in the water too long, so use your error. The last section we have is markers. I use the Tombow water-based dual tip markers for sketching, especially when I want to get ideas down pretty quickly, but also just to incorporate some color into the sketch. It's nice to change up what I'm working with, especially when I'm trying to be a bit looser in my sketches like I am here. My favorite colors from Tombow are the red number 757 that you see here, and the green number 126. This red is just like a nice, comforting shade of red, if that makes any sense. And the dual-ended tips also make these really great for doing sketches on the go. And last but certainly not least, we have the Posca paint markers. I primarily use the bullet tips in PC5M and PC3M. I will use these for quick sketches in my watercolor sketchbook, or just for adding details to my finished artwork like I am here. These paint markers are always fun to work with, and as long as you use them with a heavier cold press paper, they will dry down beautifully. And here is the finished little drawing I made using almost all of the materials I talked about today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and hearing my opinion on these supplies because I enjoyed giving it. Once again, I have linked every single product I have talked about down in the description box, so you can try out any of these products if you're curious about them. If you aren't already, please subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!